Welcome to T-Smack, home of the T-Smack. May I take your order?
Hey there, hi there, hello there. Welcome to an all-new episode of Talking Smack, where we talk superheroes, movies, animation, comics, and much, much more. I am your host, Josh Scar, and Alex is not here this week. He is protesting silently about the archaic practice that is the most unholy day of the year, which is the day daylight savings time begins in the U.S. And in place of Alex for his very justified protest, I have Justin joining me once again. Justin, how are you doing?
I am absolutely fabulous, and I totally forgot it was daylight savings time, so I am exhausted. I should have gone to bed way earlier, but I couldn't pass up an opportunity to talk Disney with you. I always love it, and I think the last time we talked about it was Wish, if I remember correctly.
Maybe if that must be. I don't think we did Moana 2 together. That was me and Alex. We saw that late. So yeah, it must have been Wish. It's been that long. Holy cow. Yeah, it's been too long.
Perfect movie to talk about. I can't wait. I've been holding it in to talk this movie with you, so I'm curious on your thoughts, and I think this is going to be a great conversation.
Same. I'm really interested. I mean, we can really just kind of dive straight into it. But first and foremost, please let everyone know who you are and where they can find you, as always.
Well, I am Justin Henson of the Movie Wire. You can also find me and Antonio over at the Back to the Balcony YouTube channel and podcast. You can find the Movie Wire anywhere you listen to podcasts, and we, of course, cover new releases, streaming, unfortunately, sometimes, and mostly theatrical releases.
And don't forget the most important thing: the reigning, the reigning Talking Smack blockbuster fantasy draft champ.
That's true. World champion box office predictor. Love it.
Yep, you add that to your resume.
That's why I can't get a job. Makes sense.
You don't have the Talking Smack bump. So Hoppers is the most recent and 30th, apparently, Pixar animated release, released this last week to an estimated $88 million globally. I believe it's like 43 and 45 or 42 and 46 domestically and worldwide, respectively. So it's pretty well balanced as well. And I think 88 million for a property like this that is not based on anything. It's the only thing it has going for it is that it's a Pixar film. It's just carrying that Pixar prestige. 88 million is a pretty good going. I think it already outgained what Elio did last year. And I mean, let's really just get into it. My kids loved it. I walked away kind of thinking it was fine. I don't know if that was me buying into the hype that I'd been seeing online. They're like, Pixar's back, baby. Or if it's just like they're doing better. So I'm really curious to know what your initial thoughts were, Justin. What did you think of Pixar's Hoppers as a whole?
Well, let's not mistake ourselves here because, before I get into it, this one, I didn't watch the trailer. I read the IMDb synopsis. That's my experience walking into this movie. I knew nothing about this movie. And let's not make any mistake that this story is recycled. It's Avatar, it's Brother Bear, it's Brave, all in this hybrid that they even poke fun at one moment in the movie that I really did enjoy. But at the same time, I absolutely loved this movie. I absolutely loved the heart, the humor, the innocence of it, the messaging where we don't get the same tropes. It doesn't shove the environmental stuff. It doesn't shove all this different. You can tell this movie had stacked messaging and it was well balanced where we're not getting one dialogue driven aspect after another. It balances the humor, it balances the thrills, it balances a lot of the warmth, cute, cuddly animal features to it to a well-known balance. But that's not to say, here, the movie has flaws. I didn't enjoy the last half as much as I enjoyed the first half because I felt it was rushed. I felt the villain, even though smart, where we have small versus small, towards the end, I think given the Shakespearean direction it kind of went with tragedy, it wasn't well deserved. And we're not getting into spoilers yet. We'll get there, but I'll explain that later in the show. But for what it is, this is a type of movie that really does have something for everybody for the family, where it's hard not to smile leaving the theater. I thought it could have gone in multiple directions. It could have been generic. It could have followed the heavy-handed messaging of the politician versus a little girl, the environmental aspects of it, but this one stays grounded in its roots with Andrew's dialogue, or I'm sorry, with Andrew's screenplay, because this one goes for unity and understanding, and it completely understands that you need to have the understanding delivered in this dialogue before the unity is delivered. So I thought it was a brilliant screenplay targeted towards family. And we saw that from his previous works with Luca and Elio as well. So he has a prime directive of taking the chemistry and his messaging, driving through the chemistry of his characters versus just generic dialogue to say, here's my message, shove it down your throat, and just take it. This one is a gradual build. So there's a lot of reasons I love this movie, and I'm not going to say it's not without its flaws, and we'll get into it.
I can't say you're wrong on anything that you just said. The messaging in the movie is pretty much there throughout the entirety. The strength of the film is in the interpersonal relationships, particularly with Mabel and King George, and like you said, similar with Elio, where Elio and I forget was it Oscar or whatever the worm monster's name was, that they became best friends. The relationship that he creates with those characters is wonderful. I think Elio is highly underappreciated. I don't think it's great by any means, but it's definitely above more middling Pixar things. So I think Elio is another prime example of just bad marketing and not understanding where to push the marketing in terms of finding the heart of the film without giving too much away. And also Elio's missing like 10 minutes of plot with the our aunt character, that just really kind of shifts the movie in a nonsensical direction. But with Hoppers, this does feel like a complete movie. There's nothing that really feels like it's missing. Like there could be 5 minutes more and you're pretty much still getting the same movie no matter where you add it. You could take 5 minutes less and you're probably still getting a similar movie. You're just, again, losing a few little beats here and there. But for the most part, I think the runtime is solid. The dialogue, the scenes, everything that's in the movie, there's nothing that is wrong with it. Where I walked away from it was, and I think I will openly admit, I feel like this is more just me projecting and maybe putting a little too much pressure on a Pixar movie at this point in time with their run and their polish. But I did feel like the message of the movie as I walked away from it was, you might be in the right, but you shouldn't be a dick about it. And it's not wrong. It's not a wrong message because no one's going to listen to you if you're right and you're just being a dick about it. But you can't, the inverse isn't true. And so like I'm projecting way too much of my personal issues that are happening in the real world right now onto this film because there's a lot of wrong stuff happening and a lot of people saying the right thing. And you kind of need to be a dick to get anywhere on a platform to say what you need to say to make sure the right thing is being heard. And so like there's a weird imbalance, but I was talking with Ricky about this a little while ago and she had brought up the idea of compassion, and compassion is going to get you way further. And I'm like, maybe that's where I was missing the message, is because Mabel needed to learn compassion. It wasn't that she's hot blooded. She boils over really quickly and just immediately acts irrationally. She lets the intrusive thoughts win. It's that she's missing that compassionate beat for the person who is in the right. Because in order to get the person who is in the wrong to come to understanding, you need compassion when they accept that maybe they're in the wrong. You can't just walk in and be doing I told you so. You can only be like, okay, now let's get to work. That's the idea. And I think that is a big part of what this movie is trying to say. But I guess I just needed something a little more in your face from it than I needed to have a conversation with another adult about it than my kids. My kids love the movie. And to the movie's credit, on a more superficial level, if you're concerned about Tom the Lizard being extraordinarily annoying, thankfully he's not. He's in the movie just the right amount, and all the annoying things that you're seeing in the promotional materials, that's it. Like, the promotional materials do way more annoying stuff than he does in the movie, and I thought that was really a nice change of pace from other things.
I'm going to go on a almost agreement with you, but also a different viewpoint because here's kind of the way I looked at it. And I think this movie came at a perfect time with all the noise of the world, right? Where we do have a lot going on in the background. We have a lot of very strong opinions going on in the world. And this is where I knew this movie was going to go on the right path because we do have all this loudness of wanting to do right and different views of what is right. And we have Mabel in the first scene stealing animals, and she attaches to her grandmother instead of discouraging what a lot of people or some people might say this is bad behavior, it's inappropriate. We get a beautiful scene of Mabel and the grandmother on a rock just shh, listen. And that sets the groundwork for what we're gonna see. And the actions of Mabel and what Mayor Jerry, I think his name is.
Mayor Jerry, and yeah,
Yeah. And there is a humorous scene where they're arguing gibberish back and forth, and it's to symbolize a lot of the loud voices in the world. It's to symbolize things you're hearing. And we have to remember at times this was meant for kids. So at the same time, how is Disney going to really symbolize what's going on in the world to kids on an elementary level and still have some enjoyment for adults? And I think this is where it really does prove the point is kind of what you said really did resonate with me is you have to be that bold voice. You have to be arrogant. You have to be confident. Whatever. You have to be the loudest person in the room almost to an extent to have your voice heard. And I think that is a brilliant example of two bold voices going at each other and nothing is solved. It's a brilliant scene. And as we grow, we see the relationship build once, like I said earlier, you have to have understanding before unity. And we see these two characters between Mayor Jerry and Maribel really start to understand each other, then unite. So I think it sets the groundwork for telling a message that is elementary for kids on saying you don't have to be a dick to really get your way. And I love the compassion piece that you just mentioned because the movie fills in the middle with that compassion. So you have the conflict in the beginning, you have the compassion in the middle, and the compassion leads to what's going to end up in unity. And I think that is a brilliant and beautiful message for kids right now when we have a world of chaos, when we have a world of just loud voices, is how are they going to interpret that? And Disney took it and said, let's give an elementary example of what's right and progress it to a climax that is a little, and again, I'll get into it, but make it so the kids can understand that it's not about the loud voice. It's about what you do with your voice and how you build a relationship through understanding. And I thought that was a beautiful message. And I'm glad they didn't go hard in the environmental aspect. That is just the mere conflict of the movie. So I see it gradually build towards a bigger message that kids are going to understand and adults are going to appreciate because they really do have something that we can relate to because a lot of us watch the news, we watch social media, we know what's going on in the world, and we can appreciate the refresh being refreshed by this kind of point of view.
the messaging of the movie is definitely more about social compromise or social compassion, I guess would be the theme of the week here, I guess. Because yeah, we have the environmental aspect of everything, and that is your conflict. But the main driver of the resolution is building bridges and finding ways to get people to understand that what they're doing, although they may not see it as wrong, is affecting more in a negative than it is a positive just because they think it is a positive. And so I think that's a bigger way to walk away from this film. I just again, it's hard for me to really just shut my mind off at this point and enjoy something the way this movie should have been enjoyed just because of all the noise around us going, like you said. But I do think that the compassion element that you were referring to, because we have, the two sides that you were talking about. The compassion element is just wonderfully shown in King George, voiced by Bobby Moynihan. Which, when I heard he was in it, I was like, "Oh man, my least favorite Ducktail from the or Huey, Dewey, and Louie." Like, he was like my least favorite of the triplets there. Like, what is he bringing to this? And like, I was pleasantly surprised that he had this warmth to it. Like, I guess I shouldn't have been surprised. Like, I've seen him on Saturday Night Live. I've seen him on other things, and he's a wonderful actor. I just didn't expect to walk away from that being blown away by a voice acting performance from him, just because I just my most exposure to him that I have besides Saturday Night Live is his time on DuckTales. And again, he played just this. His Louis was just so smarmy and arrogant. I fell in love with George almost immediately, and like the movie does a great job of making you fall in love with all the animals by making them extraordinarily cute.
Our writer Jesse Andrews does really know who the pivotal character to deliver the message is, and that is going to be with King George, right? I mean, every line he delivers, it's so straight to the point and nice, and in the world we all want to live in, where it's just united, and it is hard to portray that.
Socialism, baby.
Even when you talk about eating other animals, it sounds sweet coming from his lips. So I think he does a great job. And I do want to mention the fact, and I can't go any further than saying this, is there are no huge names on the motherfucking poster. And every voice
I don't think there are any
performance here,
names on the poster, which is phenomenal.
yeah.
I still wish they would go with more voice actor oriented casting, because I can't say that Meryl Streep, who plays the Monarch Butterfly Queen,
Mhm.
it's a fun cameo,
Yeah.
but what does she really add to the voice performance? And other than that, like, it's a bunch of C list, C tier actors that no one knows except for Bobby Moynihan. John Hamm, I guess he plays Mayor Jerry, but most everyone else is a fairly little known actor, and I think that's fantastic.
I absolutely love it because when you started spouting off the box office numbers, I'm cheering this movie on to show an example. It doesn't freaking matter who you have behind the performance as long as they can do a voice performance. And I think the cast does an exceptional job here, is that there is added warmth appropriately where there needs warmth. There's some thrills, there's some fears, and you can hear it in the voice performances here. So I didn't miss having John Cena behind a mic. I didn't have Jack Black behind a mic. This is something where it adds distraction, and I think studios should take point on this, is there's no voice distractions. We're not trying to listen to the stardom power behind the character. We're seeing something fresh and new, and I think that added to the experience because, again, not seeing the previews or anything, I did see the IMDb profile, and usually when you see a cast like this, you're like, the studio might not have confidence in this movie to really spend the money. But this is I'm thinking back to a lot of animated movies that I really did enjoy, and it's with limited cast, it's with limited star power. And this proves again that these are people that really do understand the assignment and really want to go all in on the character. So I think it's a brilliant move, and I really do feel wholeheartedly that this is going to be part of the success of the movie is these voice actors really understanding the assignment.
To shameless plug, I go off on a similar tangent in, I believe this week the episode will release. I was on I Have Some Notes to rewrite the Mario Brothers movie, not the 1993, which it was a really fun time, really great episode. So I will link that once the episode is available, and obviously we'll be sharing it on social media and Discord. One of the things I went off on was that the Mario Brothers movie, and this movie kind of is in the opposite field, where studios have decided to start really banking on putting face actors in voice acting performances, because they think we'll pay an extra couple $1 million, few million extra dollars to Chris Pratt, to Ryan Reynolds, to anyone else who is not really going to add much to the performance, and they're not going to bring anything extraordinarily unique to the role that a voice actor could for significantly less. Like I mentioned, like you could have brought in Laura Bailey, who's a really well-known anime voice actor. You could have brought in Christina V. You could have brought in any number of voice actors. Gray Delisle, Tara Strong, another one. Like you probably could have paid them half, if not like 2/3, or maybe even less of what you paid Anya Taylor-Joy to be Princess Peach. Anya Taylor-Joy brings nothing to Peach. Like she is, you cannot tell me that anyone can be like, ah, wow, Anya Taylor-Joy was Princess Peach. That's amazing. What Hoppers did is they just went, yeah, we know. No one cares about who's the voice as long as the voice fits. And every voice fits. Even John Hamm, which like I think John Hamm gets a little bit of a pass for me. Like he's just too damn charming. And I think he is really versatile as an actor that I think he can do voice acting really well. Kind of like Alan Tudyk. He's just a jack of all trades. He can do whatever he wants. I think whenever John Hamm signs onto a project, he wants to do it. It's not just a paycheck for him. He's at a point in his life where he can just do whatever the hell he wants. And I think a lot of people are mostly just in it for like, oh, everyone needs to do a Disney movie and they're throwing $10 million at me to sit in a vocal booth for a week. Okay. Yeah. Whereas this one, like we said, it's just, it fits. Everyone hits their marks. The voice direction is on point and the visuals support everything that's being said in that vocal booth that's being put on screen. This movie really does just hit the mark in a way that a lot of Pixar stuff hasn't recently. Even Elio, which I praised earlier, like it just kind of was. And I think that's mostly because they lost it in the edit. I don't think it was found in the edit like a lot of projects kind of tend to be for animated films. They kind of dropped the ball with where the heart was of that movie between like you had the newfound friendship, but you also needed that aunt nephew relationship that needed to morph into a mother son style relationship that they just kind of went 2 scenes. That's all we need. We can make that work. It was really good to see Pixar just kind of get back to doing what they do best. And here's hoping that maybe that means Toy Story 5 is still going to be really good.
And I'm really hoping that they get out of this central position where it's almost targeting either youth, nostalgia, or a certain group or teenagers, if you will. So this is one that I think is going to stay memorable because it is well rounded. This is one you can take even the grumpiest teenager to and they'll smile out of this theater because you do have a little bit of everything. You do have the humor. You do have, and let me say, innocent humor. There's, again, no real fart jokes. You have some, it tries to sell itself with the visuals when it comes to almost the preteens. And there is some thrilling moments. And I thought the flying shark with the seagulls, even though not logical, still fun.
That was, yeah, that was so much fun.
And that's, I think, the charm of this movie is when you have all these apex predators, the bear, the shark, whatever, the snakes, if you will, even to that point, we don't have these as the antagonists. We don't get tempted to have just because they're big, they're bad. This one subtly delivers the message that they're all animals, big or small. And again, we go up against the primary antagonist, which is an insect. So I think you can be an antagonist without being big. I think that is a subtle message here that really does tap into it. And what makes this message special, it's about the integrity, not the size. And that is something that I haven't seen really from Pixar start to subtly deliver is everybody is you to have a proper villain, you need to have them scary, you need to have them dark, you need to have them big. This one is very subtle. And again, it's a double-edged sword with me. I didn't agree with how it was introduced. I don't think it was handled introduced. That's my biggest flaw with this movie, is I thought it was a wasted villain, even though it was on the right track to being something very symbolic. So I think that is my biggest problem with the movie is you said it's the right runtime. I can guarantee that this one was probably cut drastically because it felt it really did need towards the climax another 15 minutes. But again, they're smart enough to know even at an hour and 45 minutes, you're really pushing the envelope to really entertain kids if it's going to be too long. But the adult in me says, give me 15 minutes more. Let's explore this antagonist.
Yeah, I can see that. It's not a huge spoiler to mention the shark that it's got one of its own posters. But let's give the talking smack rating and then dive into spoilers. I'm gonna say it's a must see. I don't know that like I said earlier, it's not like Pixar's back on track. We're not busting out Wally and then Up and hitting an above average film with Brave. Like it's not that era of Pixar, but it is getting back to it. I think it's at least on par with Brave, if not maybe a step below, but it's way better than The Good Dinosaur. It's way better than uh the Cars sequels, which I think Cars 3 gets a bad rap just because it's Cars, but like better than anything post pandemic, Pixar at least.
And I think I enjoyed it a little bit better than you did. And I think I agree with you. I don't think it's Pixar's big comeback, but it is the seedling of what's to come. I think if they stay on this track of subtle messaging, make it a universal message, make it a universal feeling for families, give a reason for families to come back to movie theaters without the adults going, ugh, without the teenagers going, ugh. This is one that I think people will enjoy and it will be a conversation afterwards. So I agree with you. It is not a huge comeback, but this gives me hope on some potential of some ideas. And this one, if we take Jesse Andrews, our writer, that I'm going to spout probably 3 more times in this because I loved his screenplay, and even Daniel Chong's first big movie. If this is his first big movie and he can accomplish this, they need to Robert Downey Jr. contract his ass because I think this is a brilliant start to a big career, and he really needs to solidify what he can do in Disney to bring, especially a screenplay by Jesse Andrews, back to the table and give us feelings for the entire family. So I think there's a lot of wins here that really people should be celebrating. And I'm going to be cheering this movie on. I hope it does set some records because it's going to set the pre-standards to how movies should be going into the future of bringing families back where everybody can enjoy.
And I think that's a really good segue, going into our spoiler section, which this isn't much of a spoiler, but because you brought up the director, the choice to kind of have like realistic animal eyes when people are engaging with the animals, and then transition when the the people are hopped into their robots, their animal robots. You get the big cartoon eyes, and you understand them. I thought that you see that in the trailers, and it's just simple visual language that I really don't think a lot of other studios, or at least like not anything that's not Pixar, would really allow, because it's putting a lot of faith and trust in people to have even a modicum of of media literacy and being like, oh, okay, this means they don't understand the language. This means they do. And I get it. They do a great job of having that. And again, they kind of set you up and bring you into it with the teaser trailers, but it's just a really good way of differentiating the perspective of the world too. And I just that's one thing I cannot praise enough, is that it put faith in the audience to be smart enough to understand this visual cue.
Well, it was almost like a cartoon, right? It was almost like making fun of itself to an extent, but giving two perspectives where when you're actually in the shoes of an animal or in the avatar, if you will, you are seeing these big eyed, cutesy animals, almost like a cartoon you'd see in a hand drawn cartoon to an extent. And then you go into the human element and you're seeing them just as real animals. And when we have Mabel really see these animals that they love for the first time, it's almost you're seeing a mental picture of what cute is, of what something you love is, in its full artistic perspective. And then you go back out of it and they're still adorable, but they're so realistic that it takes you back to reality. It's one of those in an avatar, cartoon, out of the avatar, real. So I did appreciate that. And I think a lot of the visuals, it does have fun with itself when it's appropriate. It never goes over the top. Even when we have the flying shark doing the car
I
chase
was
scene,
gonna say it doesn't go over the top until the shark starts flying.
and even with that car chase scene, it's you feel a real threat, even though it's humorous, but it's still kind of what's gonna happen next. You don't find it ludicrous. It takes probably about 5 to 10 seconds to say, "Come on. It's gonna take probably about a 20,000 more seagulls to lift this damn shark." But at the same time, I was on the edge of my seat seeing what this great white was gonna do to this car, and it was complete popcorn entertainment. That's why I think this movie is so special because it knows and recognizes what's ludicrous and what's real, and it takes the audience along for that ride. Is we have to have elements that do entertain kids that's gonna be memorable, and honestly, I'm still thinking about it day after my screening is moments in this movie that just pop into my head, whether that's messaging or entertainment or emotional. So I think it knows when to forte and when to pull back. So I thought, again, it's brilliant direction of knowing what your audience is going to be.
I also appreciate the restraint that they had because this is the 30th film that Pixar has feature length film that Pixar has produced. And there are a whole bunch of Easter eggs in the film for previous Pixar works. Plus, they do their usual teases for what's coming next. With this one of the more obvious Easter eggs that they could have done is instead of having this cheerful shark, I think her name was like Dolores or something, it could have been Bruce from Finding Nemo. That I mean, I think most people would have probably enjoyed it if they had done it right. All you need to do is say hello in that one way that he does. But, instead, it's just another great white shark that more or less looks just like Bruce from Nemo. My kids really jumped out when they saw the talking dog collar on the whiteboard at the end of the film, and I was shocked they didn't catch the Crush Easter egg at the very start of the film. But overall, it's a lot of what Wish kind of had, no pun intended, wished it could have done in telling a more coherent and fulfilling story, while also sprinkling in all of these Easter eggs. I still really enjoy Wish. The music, I think, for the most part, is really good, but the ending still gives me chills. Like we talked about that when we reviewed that. The ending is just beautiful, but the as you say, the crescendo doesn't earn itself in that moment. Whereas this film, like I think it earns everything. And as you mentioned, if there is a storyline that I think is cut from this, I think it's when Mabel is starting to potentially, in her human body, having adverse effects to long-term exposure in the hopping apparatus, because they're like, is she gonna get brain damage? She's foaming at the mouth. Is she gonna get rabies? What's happening? And they just went, okay, now we've moved her into the van and we're gonna get her out. And no real adverse effects other than she's a little groggy when she wakes up.
I think the biggest hole in this movie, and I talked about it earlier, the Shakespearean themes to it. And it sounds ridiculous to kind of point out a children's movie to kind of the Shakespeare tragedy, but here we have the antagonist, the son of the insect queen. I don't know if there's a name to it. I forget. But anyway, and this kid's mom gets smashed, gets killed in front of him. And we kind of just skim over that where he becomes the insect king. And there's a question mark. Is it power or is it for revenge? That's where it's not really clear. This character is never really fully developed, even towards the end where he's speaking on stage, where there's opportunity, where there's conversation, but it's never really clear. And I think that is a big miss where kids, even adults, are going to say, this kid has to be fucked up. He just got his mom's like splatted in front of him. And there's no real clarity of what the intent is. They kind of almost portray the insect king at this point as a spoiled brat. But I think that was the wrong direction. I think it kind of just throws us off a little bit. It's almost like a throw in character where they say, okay, we don't know where to go from this point. So we're going to kill your mom. You're going to have your own little body and you're going to become a human and you're going to take revenge with no context behind it. So I think it's a missed opportunity, maybe even a paragraph of dialogue. That's all we needed to kind of explain what the motivation or what the feelings of this character is going to go. And I think this character, even though an antagonist trying to destroy humans that wanted to destroy the human race, needed to have an explanation of why. because otherwise it's just going to be pure motivational violence. And I think I had a problem with that is there we can visually see it, but our kids going to place 2 plus 2 that this is the motivation of the antagonist. So I think it's a missed opportunity on messaging. I think it's a missed opportunity on exploring a character. And I think it kind of ruins the unity thing a little bit when we don't have the answer of why. And kids need and love to hear why. And I think that is the only thing that this movie takes a shot at the intelligence of kids, thinking that they can't handle. If they can't handle it, don't kill the mom because there's going to be a lot of kids asking why. And I think that is the biggest miss of the movie.
So I don't think you're wrong. But if I remember correctly, they do mention that the kid had just become like spiteful or vengeful towards his mom anyway. Because he's like, oh, she's been around forever. Finally, it's my time. So it's more just the spoiled brat angle. And but like, you're not wrong because his motivation to become human or like to live in the Jerry body, they give him kind of the colloquialism would be a Napoleon complex, even though presumably he was not actually that small. But the idea is he's tired of being an insect. He's going to be a human. He creates a Jerry robot avatar that he can hop into, and that motivation is not entirely clear. Like what what does being Jerry do for him that being the insect king doesn't? So like you're not wrong there. I don't disagree. But they do kind of lay the groundwork for him to just be a spoiled brat and a bad egg. But like everyone else kind of following his lead is still a little also murky. Um,
It's just
so like
rushed.
yeah. So I don't disagree that it's something that could definitely be fleshed out a little bit more because a villain without a clear motivation isn't a good villain. And like that's where I'm forgetting the character's name from Up, but Christopher Plummer's character from Up, where he has a very clear motivation. Like he's grown old and spiteful and vengeful towards Kevin and the birds that he is, and anyone that gets in his way is going to be a problem. And like that's where we remember him. And same thing with Syndrome in The Incredibles. We remember him because he has a personal tie-in with Mr. Incredible, not allowing him to become a hero. And that's where we build these connections and we understand and empathize with them to an extent. But with this kid, he's just a spoiled, rotten little prince who apparently is fine with his mom being killed because it means he gets to take over. And it's like, well, I don't hate my mom. I don't, I don't want to rule the world. So it's just, as we said earlier, as you said earlier, it's just kind of becomes a Saturday morning cartoon villain. And that, that kind of leaves the oomph behind the plot a little hollow.
Yeah, and I think said and done, there had to be more to it, but I think for the sake of time, it had to be cut short. And it's hard for me to pinpoint what could have been taken out because I loved the entire movie up until that point. I think the pacing was on point. I think it had great visuals that were appropriate to really drive this movie home. So I think it was just, and I don't want to shit on the ending because at the end of the day, I thought it was visually appealing. I thought that it ended the message with a forte. I think just the visual of animals, humans alike, going and putting out a fire, I thought everything looked great. I almost would have been fine with even cutting the last 15 minutes and having another reason for everybody to unite and still have those visuals without the overclimatic Jerry robot. So I think everything kind of led up to tie it up on a nice bow. And it's like I said earlier, for every flaw this movie has, it has a redemption to it. It does recover. And even though I hated the villain to an extent, it still recovered because I was engulfed into the visuals of the climax. I was engulfed into what our other characters were doing. That was just a minor piece of it. So I think this movie does have its ups and downs, but there's no mistaking that this movie knows where it kind of lacks and amplifies on what its strengths are. And that's with the characters and that's with, again, the overall message of unity. And that's something that's going to make this movie extremely memorable, especially in a Pixar movie, to have a movie targeting towards a lot of families of different ages, uniting and smiling in unison, walking out of this movie. It's almost one of those uh, movies that you go to that has that unity message, and you're all walking out saying, that was good.
Yeah, the ending definitely gave me a little bit of a Wild Robot vibe because it just ending on a forest fire that ends with a beaver having to help create a water flood to douse the flames is a little too on the nose from the Wild Robot ending. Um, but they do enough to differentiate it. But I think that's also another point where the Wild Robot evoked more of an emotion from me, and I think it's because of the Bright Bill Roz relationship, where the friendship between Mabel and George was wonderful. Like I'm not saying it's bad, but as a parent, I just the connection was a little different for me. And again, that's on me for having different expectations or doing a comparison. Like taking this movie as it is, I think it is a beautiful film. The messaging is there. I just again I'm becoming uh just a sour old man because the world is
Crotchety.
not.
Crotchety is the
Yes.
word.
I'm becoming a crotchety old man because the world is going to shit around me, and I'm just like, it can be fixed. And I like like that's where Mabel, as we were talking about like a villain, um, Mabel kind of falls into that Merida Pixar character because she is her own worst enemy in this story. Because if she takes her grandma's advice immediately in this story and like calms down, isn't just immediately argumentative and combative and like, I'm right, you're wrong, this is why, and people just don't listen to her because she's, as I said earlier, she's being a dick, so people aren't listening to her. Um, it changes the perspective when she finally connects the dots and is like, okay, breath. Let's find a calm way to create a solution for this, or at least present a solution. And I think, again, to an extent, I really want to put a real world application to this. And for interpersonal life, I think this is the perfect message for that. But I'm trying to think too macro, and that's where I'm getting hung up because I can do the micro. The macro just needs to be fucking fixed.
And, I think this is the beauty of cinema movies, especially for kids. If it's done right, it's an influence. It's going to tell the right message. And you brought up The Wild Robot, and I'm going to agree with you. The Wild Robot, hands down, is a better movie emotionally. This one drives it home where if I need a good cry with just some visuals and some simplistic message, that's my go-to. But I think Pixar is really creating subgenres of itself of what movie are you really going to go to? And am I going to go to Wild Robot or Hoppers? That's a hybrid of movies we've seen numerous times in the past, but does it in a new way to tell a story. I think Hoppers is a more well-rounded movie that you can pop in and everybody's gonna enjoy. Wild Robot, you know what? If somebody's having a bad day, if I know my kids are having a bad day, I might not pop in Wild Robot because you know what? We might not want a house full of tears, but I agree with you. As a father, Wild Robot is a good cry as an animated emotional ride. But I love this is what I love, is the fact that we have so many choices, so many stories, and I hope that we don't get the same formulas, the same kind of nostalgic cries every single time. I do hope that I know I can take my family into a movie and have some humor, some thrills without some questionable humor. And I know I can walk in with me and my wife on a date night and go to the Wild Robot without the kids and still have that adult emotion for spout through my eyes. So I think it's brilliant that we're getting a variety. Now, Pixar was on a rough peak when it comes to what they were trying to accomplish, and I think that's where they went wrong. You attack the emotion or you attack the family element with a well-rounded message, and I think that's where Disney really needs to hold on to this formula of you can have multiple points, but don't focus on one particular age group. Don't go heavy-handed on the message. Keep with simplistic messaging that everybody can understand, and it is hard in a world we live in today to really get past that. But this is where the escape really comes is it's a reset button. It's a cinematic reset button for our generation to say, this is how it's supposed to be. Be cordial, be compassionate, and it's not about being the loudest voice. It's about being the one to really feel that compassion and understanding for somebody else. The one that doesn't feel it towards you, guess what? That's in the wrong. That's morally wrong. And I think this movie tells a more straightforward moral message than a lot of animated movies that we've seen in movies past. This is on the reset button for generations. And I really hope that this is a first time movie for a lot of youngsters right now.
So we've brought up the plateauing of Pixar, and I gotta say, I think we're giving too much credit to Onward and Lightyear because since Toy Story 4, let's go back a little further. Toy Story 4 was 2019. Okay, so let's say the plateau starts in 2015 after Inside Out. Inside Out peaks, then you have The Good Dinosaur, which is a movie that no one really wanted or understood, and again was not marketed very well, but it's also just a mess of a movie. But then you have Finding Dory, which perfectly serviceable, more or less the same movie as Finding Nemo, but Dory focused. It's still pretty heartfelt. Cars 3, which I think it's better than what people would give it credit for just because it's Cars. It's still not great, but it's pretty good. Coco, that is S tier Pixar. That's in 2017. Incredibles, we're back down. Incredibles 2 really just missed the mark. I think there's a lot of expectations with that too. Toy Story 4, another one that it made $1 billion. A lot of people were like Alex, and they were just like, "Why? We you had a perfect out, and now we're coming back. Why?" And I again can't disagree with that, but it made $1 billion. So guess what? We're getting a fifth one. And then we got the pandemic. People are looking for anything and everything possible to make themselves feel better. And we get Onward, which is a real weird miss. I don't even know how you would really describe Onward other than it just someone was given carte blanche and they went, okay, go for it, and it just missed. Soul is absolutely beautiful. I believe that was the best picture winner of 2020. That's maybe A tier. Pixar, it's not quite S tier, but the score is S tier. Like John Batiste just knocked it out of the park with that one. Like that's the driver of that film. Luca, I think, is probably A tier. You could maybe talk me down to B tier, but Luca is also, I think, A tier stuff. Turning Red, maybe B tier, but I don't think it's a plateau. It's still a pretty good peak. Lightyear, that's a dip. That's not even a plateau. That's a Elemental. I think you're back on the rise, but again, people saw that and they went, "You're just doing Inside Out with elements. What the hell?" So they again more on the marketing than it is anything else. Inside Out 2 made $1 billion, was the highest grossing Disney anything until Zootopia 2. Elio, again, I think that's B tier Pixar. It's maybe plateauing a little bit from Elemental, but it's a movie that was, again, let down by its marketing. And now Hoppers, probably in like a B plus A tier area for Pixar. It's not quite S tier, but it's really close. And maybe, hopefully, this means that Disney and the people behind the scenes will give more original stories like Hoppers a chance. But I know we have Toy Story 5, Incredibles 3, Coco 2 all announced. So we'll see. But I did want to bring it up because we had mentioned a few times that like there was like this plateau or like this perception of a downturn for Pixar. But going back 11 years, they've had 3, 4 movies that are probably substandard for them. That's still a pretty good track record after 30 films.
It's going to be up for opinion. I'm going to do this in under a minute. So I'm going to start with Brave really quick. Brave, unique story, recycled conflict. Monster University nostalgia sequel. Inside Out, unique idea, emotional, loved it. Good Dinosaur production nightmare, absolutely fucking shit. So Finding Dory sequel, nostalgia bait. Cars 3 sequel, Coco, perfect. Incredibles 2 sequel, Toy Story sequel, nostalgia, Onward. What the fuck was going on with that? So nobody knows what Onward was. It was just a bunch of cool voices on a poster and the pandemic happened, whatever. Soul, I'm going to disagree with you on this to an extent. Soul, great score. Forgettable. Forgettable. This is one that I think was victim to the pandemic, and I think this one would have had a better reaction if it went full length into theaters and we had that emotional grab. But to me, it's absolutely forgettable. Luca, same thing. I think it could have done extremely well. I think it had the relationship build. I think it had everything going for it, but the direction was not on point on the direction it wanted to go to get that emotional level. All these previous 3 movies between Onward, Soul, and Luca wanted that emotional grab, but it never got there. And that's from a lot of things happening in the background, from the composition, with the exception of Soul, but the direction was an issue here. Turning Red, again, don't know what that is the main point that I'm going to, that they're targeting a specific demographic of teenagers to really bring them in. I didn't get it. I thought it was cutesy. I love some of the music in it, but again, forgettable. Lightyear, again, what the fuck? Throw it in the garbage. Elemental, I think it really did try something, but again, it's a copycat of everything else. Inside Out 2, again, a sequel I'm not going to speak to. Elio, again, had a lot going for it. It's on the crescendo. It's on the rise to being something unique. And I think this is where I think we had this conversation. I liked it a little bit better than you did because of that chemistry build. And now we have Hoppers, not a sequel, a recycled conflict, but it does something with it. Everything that we've listed so far that's unique had a problem with that main point of doing something with it, a familiarity that we've seen before, but they didn't know how to get there. It took new filmmakers, new filmmakers to make this into something. And I think this is where I said earlier is the seedling into something, is find these new directors, get a fresh, unrecognizable voice cast, and you might have something to work with, because you know what? Our voice actors are going to take a lot more direction if they're not under the powerhouse of, I don't need this project. So you have a lot more Play-Doh with your cast if you have some fresh voices. So there is a lot working with Hoppers right now that you're not going to see from the sequels and nostalgia bait. Toy Story 5, guess what? It's going to make you cry. You know it. You know it's going to go for that emotional grab. But that's the nostalgia piece of it that we both just listed. Is Hoppers is going to be the first movie since Brave in 2012 that really does feel unique. It feels like it has something that's recycled that makes it feel fresh.
I don't think you hit your under a minute mark, but you're not wrong.
I gave up. Saw the minute. I'm like, screw it. I'm going.
I did miss, Pixar does have its own original film coming out called Gato in 2027. I think there's a teaser image out for that one. But that's another one where at least the original announcement was like, who is this for? The argument that Pixar has like lost a step, I don't know that it holds merit, just because if you take the projects on their own, I think at the very least places like Sony is kind of on an upward trend right now between Spider-Verse, Meet the Mitchells, apparently GOAT,
Loved
surprisingly good. But like Universal doesn't care about being emotional or deep. They just want your money and they want the fart jokes. So they're just going to be that turn your brain off fun. But I mean, DreamWorks would probably kill to have a Hoppers in their lineup. And I mean, DreamWorks is on a pretty good run at the moment as well, between Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, The Wild Robot. They have their own litany of stuff too, with Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs and the Shrek films, which like I can take or leave the Shrek films, the Shrek franchise, but I mean, Puss in Boots and The Last Wish it's up there as a movie that is perfectly accessible, and you can watch it without knowing anything about Shrek, which is one of the reasons why I think I really enjoy it, along with Antonio Banderas just being himself in there.
You did not mention Shrek 2, which involves a song that I've talked to you numerous times over and over again that makes it the perfect animated sequel. Holding Out for a Hero with
Holding Out for a Hero, yes, that
Miss
is your get out
Julie
of jail
singing
free
it.
card with
Amazing.
Justin. So with that, I think we've said all that we can say about Pixar's Hoppers. So Justin, once again, please let everyone know where they can find you.
You can listen to me, Justin, at the Movie Wire podcast, anywhere you listen to podcasts. You go check out me and the Cult-Worthy Cinema Podcast crossover show, Back to the Balcony, on YouTube, and again, anywhere you listen to your podcasts.
And if you'd like to hear a more formal review of this movie from Justin, tune into the Movie Wire. That should be an episode that comes out tomorrow. So definitely do that and do yourself a favor and just subscribe, because he's our modern day Ebert that no one knows about yet. So
Don't
get in
tell
on the ground floor. Or do, because we need more critics like him out there, because he appreciates the films as they are.
You are a sweetheart.
I'm just buttering you up. So please join our Discord. The link is in the episode description. You can join in on the conversation. If you've seen Hoppers, if you've seen Scream 7, whatever movies you've seen, please hop in the Discord and have a conversation with us. We enjoy any and all topics. As we mentioned, superheroes, movies, animation, comics, and much, much more. You can follow Justin on Blue Sky, Instagram, Twitter, wherever you may social your media. Follow us on Blue Sky, Facebook, or YouTube at Talking Smack Pod. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit that like button. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Comment, subscribe. Email us at tsmackpod@gmail.com. Thank you to Leo Allen for our musical themes, Beppo for original avatars, Retro Ale Studios for our Reiki avatar. Once again, if you're watching on a podcatcher or listening on a podcatcher, like, subscribe, rate, review, leave a comment if you're listening on Spotify. Justin, there's a TV show out there people should be watching. What is that TV show?
Watch Star Trek.
Who loves T-Smack?
I love T-Smack. Is it true? I do, ooh.